Black Politics Today. An eye for what's at stake in global politics and your source for the social, economic, and political impact of public policy on the African American community. Your host, Kelly Michael Williams, is a political strategy veteran with an undefeated campaign record and the political experience that spans nearly 3 decades, from Mayor Willie Brown in California to President Barack Obama in our nation's capital. So get ready for a fresh and honest approach on the politics that affect you and your family the most. Now, your host, Kelly Michael Williams.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. I'm your host, Kelly Michael Williams. Hello, how is everybody doing? I am getting ready here tonight to have a broadcast like none other. I'm excited. I'm happy, as I think they always say, like a fat kid in the candy store or a pig in slop. It's just one of those shows that, we're looking forward to having. And I'm looking forward to letting my guests just tell us, share with us, empower us, incite us, and let us know, what's at stake for us right now and what's going on socially, economically, and politically. Because, right now, as we talked about, I think last week, 28 states have gone across this country to implement or propose new legislation that's going to hamper us or stop us from doing anything. But before I get to that, let me first, again, thank everyone for joining us tonight. If you want to join our conversation tonight, give us a call at 516-590-0143. That's 516-590-0143. Of course, if you're listening to us on Blog Talk Radio, you can also watch us on Facebook at Black Politics Today and YouTube at Black Politics Today. So you can always go to our website at blackpoliticstoday.com and get the URLs and click on them and go there, or you can go to our Twitter account. Black Politics Today and click on the links there as well, or Instagram as well. And as I was introducing the topic for tonight, Black Power, power to the people. I was talking about across the country how so many states are implementing or trying to implement or putting in legislation to change the electorate. It's like the GOP decided they needed to recalculate after 2020. They put in all these laws to allow folks to vote by mail and to have no excuse and alike because of COVID-19. But I don't think they expected the turnout to be what it was. And I don't think they expected the people who turned out to be who they were. So now they're recalculating. They're deciding we might need to do some things that change things up a little bit, because Black folks came out and voted unrestricted, and that wasn't in their best white Republican interest. And so now they've decided that 28 states have decided that they need to put in new measures to stop Black folks from voting. And they recognize that in 2022 and 2024, there may be even more African Americans voting. But even though they have an advantage with redistricting and reapportionment, they're still afraid of what can happen. And in certain states, some states, they've even asked for 2 forms of ID. As you know, after Barack Obama was elected, they decided that we need to have ID to vote. We had never used ID before. We never had voter fraud before. All of a sudden, because a Black man got elected, there was voter fraud in our electoral system. And so now, after they've already said we needed ID to vote, in some states, they're asking for 2 pieces of ID. So the question is going to be, what is that second form? And you remember I talked to you about 3-4 weeks ago, at the beginning of Black History Month, I asked, what's going to be that second form of ID? Is it going to be a passport? Is it going to be a social security card? Is it going to be a credit card? What is it going to be that now we need to show a second form of ID in order to vote? And now that their candidate lost, they didn't lose the state houses. So the reality of it is that people did not want Trump. Unfortunately, they still wanted the GOP in charge of certain states: Texas, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania, states where it was close, where if 10 to 11 seats had flipped, they Democrats would have been a majority. And now we're looking at something like these 6 or 7 states still having a Republican majority, and now having the power of the pen to redraw the district lines, as well as decide reapportionment of how many legislators are going to be there for African Americans, Black folks. Because as you know, they already pencil us out and make our districts just so gerrymandered to where it's only Black folks in that district, that you only have one representative. And that's probably what's going to happen. That's probably what's going to happen. So tonight we're going to discuss that. I got my man from Dallas, Texas. We're going to talk about the Texas, winter storm and the rage and how that's impacting African Americans and what's going on. And then later on in the show, I have a new guest coming to the show, Malcolm Kenyatta. He is a young, energizing political from Pennsylvania. He's been all over the media during the last cycle, and now he has announced that he's going to be running for U.S. Senate. So we're going to be talking to him about that as well. 30-year-old young brother from Philadelphia. We're going to talk to him. But tonight, I'm excited to have my brother who is just out here. He is we say the man. He's the teacher, the preacher, the master orator, the activist. He is who he is. He is like the man, none other. And my brother, my friend, the Right Reverend Dr. Freddie Douglass Haynes III. I want to welcome him to the show because I had the honor and pleasure of being on the show with him, panel with him. And it was just awesome. I was like, man, I get to sit on this panel with my brother right here. Oh my goodness. It was crazy. I was like, oh my God, what happened? What happened? Where do we go? And he was there. He was on the panel, and it was a great panel. We had a lot of fun together. I learned a whole lot from my brother, and clearly it was like one of those things where my computer's just acting up right now. Here we go. It was one of those panels where I sat there and just listened to him and was getting so much out of it. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. It was incredible to know exactly what and how politics and the church cross paths and everything that he was talking about. So I want to welcome him to the show. Certainly, it's always good to have you, Doctor. How you doing, my brother?
Doing well. Thank you so much, my man. And thank you for your gracious and hyperbolic words of presentation. After all, you were the professor that evening, and I learned so much from you. I appreciate your consciousness. And let me especially say thank you, because what you're doing is keeping us, here's the word, woke between election cycles. Because a lot of times, and this is what happened again in 2008, we were so excited. We were partying over the election of Obama. And while we were partying, the Tea Party went to planning. And so we have to learn the importance of that brilliant statement. It's real short, teaspoon of terms, but a ton of truth. The struggle continues. They don't quit. As a matter of fact, they've taken on the mantra of baby's kids. They don't die, they multiply. And so as a consequence, they keep coming for us. And while we are celebrating victories, they are plotting their next advance against us. And so again, you on point as always. People are thinking, hey, we just won the election, so why are we talking about it now? But here's my man, Kelly Michael, saying, no, we can't rest right now. Now is the time to do what our girl did in Georgia. She said that after she lost that race, it was snapped from her. Speaking of Stacey Abrams said, you know what? I went through all those grief stages, but I added one more stage to grief. And that was the stage of plotting. And right now, we got to plot. Because the more we plot, the more we prevail and make this country what it should be.
And I'm glad you said that, because that's what happens. I think we get out there and we forget after we win an election, we rest on our laurels and think, oh, we got it. But we didn't win the state legislature. We didn't get out there and do the census like we needed to, so we can make sure our dollars come to us. We didn't vote down ballot ticket to make sure that everyone got in there so that we can do what we needed to do. Because the reality of it is, Pastor, is that in Dallas, I think you guys had 11 seats, right? And it was it was contested seats, but yet they didn't get the votes turnout. They didn't get the turnout. The U.S. Senate, you didn't get the turnout. So now they can redistrict and gerrymander that whole state because the Supreme Court said you can do it based on race, ethnicity, and politics. And now, what are you going to do?
Yeah. And again, that's why, again, what you're doing is so vital, because we have to have a political IQ that does not stop at the top of the ticket. It does not stop at the places on the ballot that get a lot of attention. It's that down ballot stuff. As they say, what? Politics is local. And so if it's local and you're doing what's national, then what's local is going to undermine the victory you thought you gained nationally. That is why, again, we celebrated Barack Obama. Barack Obama won. But guess what? While Barack Obama was winning and was celebrating that victory, here's what they did. At the same time, they gutted the Voting Rights Act. And they did a lot of stuff locally. The Tea Party, they took that thing over locally. And that is how they got so much done and set the stage for, the most notorious liar in the history of the presidency. But that stage was set because they were planning and plotting while we were partying at the top of the ticket, and they went down ballot and took this thing over.
And they recognize that. And I think we miss that. I don't think in some cases, us as African Americans, but also the Democratic Party, they don't have the same gumption that the Republican Party has. They don't have that killer instinct that the Republican Party had, where they can go out there and do not care if they step on your neck and crack it. They're going to keep marching forward. Democrats want to pick you up, dust you off, fix you up. And in the meantime, they've, like you said, they've already gone ahead of us. Your state's hurting right now. And I know that we've had at least 38 or 40 people pass away due to the freeze and the frost and things like that. But I'm going to ask you a difficult question because four years ago, well, about 5 years ago, Ted Cruz, after the Hurricane Sandy, voted to not allow New Jersey to get any aid because it was like, oh, well, we don't want to pay that. We have to worry about our deficit in our budget. Yet he went on and passed this $2 trillion tax cut. Would Cory Booker be wrong if he decided to hold up some funding for Texas?
I mean, what he would be doing is basically playing the game that these Republicans like to play. See, they play hardball and Democrats like to play softball and do these softball pitches. They play chess. Democrats are playing checkers. And guess what? Every single time that they play hardball, we play softball, they end up winning the game. And so now is the time for Democrats to say, you're going to grow a spine and take a stand for what's right, as opposed to allowing them to always play us, because invariably, because we put all of our balls in that Democratic basket, black folk get played, even and the Republicans get paid. And so my thing is that stuff has to stop, but it will only stop when we insist that Democrats grow a spine and act like they are, like they got some courage.
Right, exactly. Like you said, a spine, have that killer instinct. It's like, when you play in sports, you got to have that killer instinct. You can't let them get back in the game when they're 20 points down. You got to go ahead and kill them. And right now, Democrats aren't doing that. Even with the Senate at this 50-50 brunt, I mean, if we got to fire the parliamentarian to get what we need, a $15 minimum wage out, fire the parliamentarian and do it. The Republicans fired the parliamentarian 2 years ago. When they didn't get what they wanted, they fired them. But we want to always do things that's right. And that really bothers me about that. And like you said, we need to do something about that. And when you look at Dallas or look at Texas as a whole, you're so close and yet so far away. What is going to be the measurement of how Democrats and black folks look at how they're going to deal with redistricting and reapportionment? What what's going to happen, or what's the word on the street now if they're talking about it, how they're going to play the game?
I mean, word on the street, two things. Number one, we've got to watch what's happening at the top of state government. We see a governor who's already talking about what? Voter fraud, which is code language for voter suppression that they're trying to enact. And so we've got to start at that point and say, we're going to do all we can to fight voter suppression. We've got to be organizing right now to fight voter suppression. If we're not doing that, they're going to rig the game long before we get in the game. So right now, the eyes on the street are, let's make sure that they don't play us with this voter fraud lie, which is a lie, because Texas, again, was one of those states that engaged in that kind of suppression that the Supreme Court even recognized. So that's the kind of thing that we've got to be dealing with. Doc, I got to get off and get right back on, okay?
All right, go ahead, sir.
Right.
So what I'm going to do while he's doing that is talk about that, because what's happening is that we're looking at a state talking about voter fraud, which is clearly not something that they have. Texas did not have any issues when it came time to making sure that Texas won, Republicans won. Think about it from this standpoint. If they had voter fraud, Cornyn would have lost, who was their U.S. senator. If they had voter fraud, then the state legislatures would have lost, right? And if they had voter fraud, Donald Trump would have lost. So how are they talking about they have voter fraud and they want to be able to deal with that issue when clearly they still won the state? So now all they're going to do is, like Pastor said, is they're going to now put in legislation, and they're going to try to now circumvent the Voting Rights Act, because there's no more teeth in the Voting Rights Act. So Title V is essentially almost virtually gutted. I think it's Title V, or Section 5 is gutted. And all they're going to do now is put in place, with this redistricting and with reapportionment, there's likely going to be a diminished number of Democratic delegates or Democratic representatives, as well as a smaller number of probably Black representatives in Texas. So Sheila Jackson Lee, I think Davis, and who else is in Texas? I'm drawing a blank on the congressional side. There's probably going to be a reduction in that. And so now what you're going to see, as I'm talking about, 28 states have said, we're going to get out here and we're going to change things up because we don't like what's going on. We don't like what's happening. We don't like the fact that African Americans went out there and voted and Donald Trump lost, because you guys shouldn't have won Georgia. You shouldn't have won Michigan. You shouldn't have won Wisconsin. You shouldn't have won Arizona. Hey, actually, we should have. We should have won it in 2016, but there was an outside force coming in that told us, oh, well, what's her name? Hillary Clinton. She's going to win. No problem. No worries. Don't worry about it. Everything is fine. Everything is good. You have nothing to worry about. Yeah, we had a whole lot to worry about. And then people sat on their behinds and didn't do what they needed to do. I'm all for the fact, as Doctor said, I'm all for the fact that we don't necessarily need to keep all our eggs in the Democratic basket. But until we can start holding Republicans accountable, the same way we need to hold Democrats accountable. I mean, it's no need us jumping ship if we're not holding anybody accountable. Right now, we need to hold them accountable and make sure they pass a $15 minimum wage, make sure they pass legislation for health care, make sure they pass legislation for jobs, make sure they pass legislation for education, giving us a $50,000 off on college loans or something like that. $10,000 is going to do nothing. You can target it, and you can target it to minorities, especially. You can target it just like they want to target this COVID relief bill Target the elimination of school debt. Target it to the low income, the least income, and those who are coming out without jobs, coming out and don't have employment with them. But hey, if they went to Harvard or Yale or somewhere, they don't need to get rid of anything. They can afford to go. Clearly, someone's going there. Now, if they went to Harvard or Yale and they went on a scholarship, or they went and they had to take out some loans because of family or what have you, that's something different. But if they're in the affordability age and they still had student loans, but they can afford it because mom and dad made all this money, they didn't come from a single family household, they didn't have income the same way we're doing the COVID relief, check the income tax statements, figure it out, see what they're making on the income tax statements. And then that's how you can target who should get a rolling scale of deferment or elimination of their school tuition bill. I can agree with that if it's a rolling scale, as opposed to just saying $10,000 across the board. $10,000 would do nothing for my daughter. $10,000 would do nothing for other folks. I mean, it costs $100,000 right now to go to school. My son's in school now. It's $60,000 a semester, and that's just the tuition. The room and board is another $20,000, $25,000. I mean, come on, that's $75, or $60,000, $85,000 a year. And for 4 years, we're talking about $200,000+. There's no way that you can expect a single parent to be able to afford that. So we need to do something. There needs to be some relief for those folks in those areas. But more importantly, we need to make sure that we hold, as Dr. Freddie said, we need to make sure we hold Democrats accountable. They need to grow a spine. We need to get out there. The problem is that because of the fact that when we stay at home like we did in 2016, we get what we got, which is like Donald Trump. And unfortunately, when we get a Donald Trump, things just go left and we end up in a situation where we are hurting socially, economically, and politically. And it just happens to be that thing that is like, what the hell are we going to do? And right now, we're stuck. We're stuck in some cases. Some of these states, because Republicans are in charge, some of these states are keeping them in charge because of just that, redistricting and reapportionment. We are not thinking the long game. We Democrats, that is, do things every 2 years. Republicans do things every 10 years. They're looking at 10-year cycles. When my next guest that comes up here in a few moments, Malcolm, we're going to talk about Pennsylvania and the Supreme and the legislature there, and what they're trying to do with the Supreme Court and the courts there is egregious at the minimum. It's just paramount of complete control of everything in the state of Pennsylvania, just like they want in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia. They want control of everything. And if we're not careful, Black folks, if we're not careful, Black America, they will get it. Stacey Abrams put out the blueprint. In your state, whatever state you're in, you need to get the blueprint and start working the plan. You got to start working the plan. You got to start doing stuff at each level, local level. It's North Carolina, right? My guest, Sheriff Birkhead, he's not able to make it tonight. He had an emergency. He's the sheriff, first responder, similarly to what we had last week when Dr. Haynes had to, he was out. It was freezing. The electricity, everything was off, and he was out there trying to, help folks out. We had the same thing tonight with Sheriff Birkhead. So we're going to welcome him. We're going to wish him the best, but we'll welcome him back next week or the week after when his schedule allows. But in North Carolina, 8 sheriffs were elected in 2018. 8 Black sheriffs. First time ever Black sheriffs were elected in those 8 largest counties of North Carolina. Each one of those sheriffs and their supporters need to make sure they're out there registering people to vote, because they're coming up for re-election. They're coming up for re-election. I think it's this year, at the end of this year, at the very least. 2022, maybe, but I think it's this year. They're coming up for re-election. And so everyone needs to be registered to vote. Everybody needs to be out there to make sure that they can collectively find those hidden rocks of people who are unregistered or not participating in the process and get registered. Because if they don't, then in come 2022, when you voting for, I think, a new governor, when you're voting for a new state senator, when you're voting for that state legislature, you're not going to have the people in place to do what you need to do. And you need to be able to put the people in place to get that done. And I'm hoping and praying that they do that. And I'm hoping and praying that we're able to move forward with that. Give us a call, 516-590-0143, 516-590-0143. I'm just looking forward to
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
I want to thank AARP for that ad there and allowing us to play those ads and many more to let our listeners and viewers know exactly what's at stake for Black America today. Socially, economically, and politically, we have to recognize that there's a whole lot going on across this country. Sometimes I think we take it for granted and we sit back and don't realize exactly how things and what are the things that are most important to us. So we don't take advantage of the opportunities. We don't take advantage of situations where you have a few people available to do what needs to be done. We need to collectively put ourselves together and get it together. I mean, bottom line, we need to get it together. We need to do the things that are, in essence, are vital to our existence across this country. I get sick and tired of hearing folks talk about the fact that, yeah, well, you know, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that, or it's not going to matter anyway. And the reality, the truth of the matter is, it's not going to matter if you don't participate. If we don't participate in the process, it's not going to matter. If we participate in the process, it will matter, as we saw in Georgia. Stacey Abrams did not sit back. She got out there and she did something with what she had. She figured out that she needed to attack consistently and continuously. She didn't sit back and wait and say, okay, well, I'm just going to wait and see what happens in the next 4 years and I'm going to run again, or I'm going to wait and see what happens in the next 2 years and maybe I'll run, or I'll do this, or I'll run for the Senate or something else. She said, no, I'm not going to run for the Senate. And I think the reason why she didn't run for the Senate was because she wanted to run for governor again. I believe that Stacey Abrams is going to come back and run for governor and actually get out there and look to make sure that she puts her foot in Brian Kemp's behind. Because if she doesn't go out there and run, I don't know who will run against her in the primary, and I don't know who would run to actually be able to take out Brian Kemp. I think she is the most viable candidate. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms could be a candidate. We don't know. It could be something that she could do. But I think across the board, throughout each of these states, we need to recognize what exactly is at stake for us. Because it's going to be difficult for us to do anything if we don't have the collective makeup of the entire state, and Black America included. Because Texas, we need to turn that blue. You got to turn Wisconsin blue. You got to turn Michigan blue. And I'm talking about the state legislative level. I'm talking about the grassroots level, because those local judges, those local folks down there, they're the ones that are going to put everything together, and they're going to be the ones that are they're going to be the ones impacted by what happens. They're going to be ones impacted by what happens. And if we sit back again, I mean, it's like we might as well pack up and go to Canada, go to South America, go to Africa, go somewhere else, because it's going to be hell to pay in America. It's really going to be hell to pay. And that's the problem with us not getting involved early and staying involved late and continuously doing what we need to do. Give us a call here or give us some comments at 516-590-0143. 516-590-0143. If you have any comments, give us a comment there on Facebook or YouTube. You can get us on Facebook or YouTube, and we'll take your comments and let our guests or myself will answer those. Other issue that I have to that I want to get on tonight is the idea of Arizona. The Supreme Court is coming out tomorrow with they're going to be hearing a case for voter suppression in Arizona. There's 2 cases there that they have put out, and one of them is going to deal with the idea of if you vote right now, as many of you know, if you vote in the wrong precinct. So let's say you lived on Main Street in Michigan. You lived on Main Street in Michigan, and you moved to First Street 2 blocks away, and all of a sudden you're in a different precinct, but you went back over to Main Street to vote. You would normally then have to vote a provisional ballot. And those provisional ballots would be counted at the end of the election. And usually they're counted if the race is close. If the race isn't close, then they don't normally count them. They will eventually count them just so they can have the total number of people voting and things of that nature. But for the most part, it's like they can go ahead and make the projections of who won the race, and they'll put it out there like that. And that's how it will end up. So what happens then is that you have those ballots that would be counted in those races. What Arizona is saying is that those ballots would not be counted whatsoever. If you vote in the wrong precinct, they're not going to count those ballots. They're going to leave those ballots out and not count them at all. And what that's going to do is that's going to make it so that those provisional ballots and or ballots where the person may still be registered in that precinct, they won't be able to vote in that precinct because technically they're living in a different precinct, but they had not switched their registration. And so the Supreme Court's going to hear that case tomorrow, and it's going to be interesting as what's going to happen, how they're going to deal with it. Because if they decide that they're not going to take that up, if they decide that they're going to allow that provision to stand, then that's going to disenfranchise a whole lot of people. I'm going to take a quick break and wait for our guests to join us here real quick. And then we're going to talk about Pennsylvania and the rest of what's happening in Arizona. We'll be right back.
Honey, put this on top of the minivan.
We're only going for 2 weeks. You want me to pack the kitchen sink too?
Well, is there room?
Hey, you guys, you going on vacation?
Who's that?
I don't know. Because we're planning on robbing your house tonight.
All right, I'm calling an alarm service.
Wouldn't it be great if you could be warned of life's risks? If you have diabetes, you can. There's a simple blood test called A1C that can help measure your risk of complications from diabetes. Why is it important? Because more than 600 people every day die from diabetes and its complications. If your A1C is above 7, your doctor can show you how to lower it. If you have diabetes, know your risk. Know your A1C. Ask your doctor, or for more information, go to www.diabetesa1c.org or call 1-877-TEST-A1C. Brought to you by the American Diabetes Association, Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation International, and the Ad Council.
If you're not facing your mortgage issues, this can be the most terrifying sound in the world. It means you've fallen behind. It means hope is dwindling. It means you're another call closer to losing your home to foreclosure.
Fortunately, there's hope. If you need real help and guidance, call 1-888-995-HOPE. That's 1-888-995-4673. Because nothing is worse than doing nothing. A public service announcement brought to you by NeighborWorks, the ad council, and this station.
You're listening to Black Politics Today, an eye for what's at stake in global politics, and your source for the social, economic, and political impact on the African American community. So join the conversation at 516-590-0143 and share your viewpoint at 516-590-0143. Now, back to your host.
Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Kelly Michael Williams. Of course, you already know that and everything else. So I want to, welcome back to the show. Pastor Freddie Haynes, Texas, he's going to rejoin us here briefly. He had an emergency, so we're looking for him to rejoin us here pretty quickly and get back with us. Excuse me. Put this together here, and I'm going to welcome my next guest. My next guest is Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, and he is a powerful young brother. He is represents the 181st District in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. He recently declared his run for the U.S. Senate on the Joy Reid show. Now, you know that's a powerful brother when he can get on Joy Reid's and MSNBC and get out there and tell the world what he's about to do out there in Pennsylvania. He's looking to run and fill the vacated seat of Senator Pat Toomey. He's a Republican that I believe he voted to convict Donald Trump in the impeachment trial. But nevertheless, they're now retiring and not running for office because anyone who went against Donald Trump, they're saying, yeah, they can't win in a primary because they're going to be primaried out. And my thing is, if your convictions are right and you're doing the right thing, you shouldn't have to worry about it. If you've done the right thing in the first place, then you would not worry about it. But I'm glad he's gone anyway. I would prefer Representative Kenyatta anyway. But the point is that the Republican Party didn't do what the heck they were supposed to do, and they shouldn't have done, and they shouldn't have been in there in the first place. That's just me, and you know how I do it. I'm just going to say it anyway. But he's in his second term right now, and he has become a national celebrity, in my opinion, across the bow from Rachel Maddow to Joy Reid to being a delegate for Joe Biden and crisscrossing the country on his behalf and making sure that he got elected and putting everything out there. So I want to welcome my brother Malcolm Kenyatta to the show. Welcome
What's
to
going on, brother.
How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate you for making time and your staff making time for you to join us tonight. I want to get right into one, your race for Senate and talk to us about that. What made you decide to run? What was the impetus that pushed you to say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get out there and run across the state?
You know, I love this little hashtag that you have under the screen here. It says it's about us. And, you know, no joke when I say to you that that's a part of why I'm in this race. It fundamentally is about us. I think the country is at a crossroads right now. Not the first time we've been here. Won't be the last time we're here. But we're at a fundamental time of choosing right now of who government should work for and who it's going to work for. We know who it's working for right now. If you're well off, you're well connected, it's working fine for you. But if you're like my family, or if you're like the families who are in my district, I represent the third poorest district in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Whew. We are in a position right now where we can see how this pandemic, as cruel as it's been, has made us all focus in on so much of what's been broken for a long time. You know, there was an eviction crisis in my district before I ever heard of COVID-19. There were health disparities that were evident in my district for a long time. You know, I watched my mom, God rest her soul, ration her insulin so she could feed me and my siblings. A lot of families know that. We got evicted multiple times. I moved 5 different times as a young person. First job, 12 years old, working under the table, washing dishes to help my mom pay the bills. The reality is, though, that type of experience is not prevalent in the Senate, if it even exists at all. Over half of the members of Congress are millionaires. And I think that partially tells us why the needs of millionaires and billionaires are prioritized over the needs of the poor and working poor.
Yeah. If you want to get join the conversation, give us a call at 516-590-0143. That's 516-590-0143. Or you can send us some comments on Facebook Live, Facebook and or YouTube. And I'm gonna bring my brother Dr. Freddie Haynes back in on the show. But let me continue with you, Representative. Looking at the success and what's happening in Pennsylvania in terms of what the GOP has done and how they have marginalized you guys, and such great effect, and how they've marginalized African Americans and the Democrats. What's going to be the strategy for Democrats to try to really push back on the Republicans coming up with the redistricting, reapportionment, and what's happening there in Pennsylvania?
So, it's the strategy, and I talked about my mom already, and I posted her today a picture for Women's History Month, and talked about sort of what she poured into me. Folks have heard this story, but when I was 11, came home complaining about stuff on the block, and my mom said, "Well, if you care so much, why don't you go do something about it?" Right? She was just a tough ass black lady. And so I was like, okay, and I ran for junior block captain, and I learned 2 things that directly connect to what we're dealing with right now. The first is that ain't nobody coming to save us. Okay. There's not somebody's going to ride in and fix these challenges as you just laid them out. But the second thing, and the good news is, we don't need anybody to come save us. We can, if we organize together, get big stuff done. And so you highlight what I often call our math problem in Harrisburg. The Republicans control the House and the Senate. They have for over a decade right now. And one of the reasons a lot of people know me across the country is because of what I was able to do in terms of stopping their so-called election integrity committee. This committee didn't need to be approved by the Senate, didn't need to be signed by the governor. Republicans in the House had the votes to do this by themselves. That would have allowed them to subpoena ballots, to impound voting machines, to bring elections officials who were supposed to be counting votes before sham hearings. And we were able to stop that by doing what I learned at 11. You speak up about what you believe, and then you organize people around that. And we got thousands and thousands of people who were calling their offices, writing letters, showing up at the height of the pandemic to stand outside of their offices and demand that their voices and their votes be heard. And you can just imagine, after you saw what they did on January 6th, what would have happened if they had had those tools at their disposal to subpoena people's ballots and to do the different things that bill would have allowed them to do. And so we exposed their lies, we exposed their nonsense, and then we organized people to step up and stand up and to make their voices heard. And that is how we get big things done. This is not about a cult of personality. This is not about one person on any of these questions. If you ask how we get it done, that really is the recipe to get things done in politics, frankly.
And I watched you. I watched you that day. I think it was on CNN or MSNBC, where it showed you sitting there arguing with the chairman about what was going on and what he was trying to do. And it was a powerful moment where I saw you actually sitting there, knowing that they had the votes, but daring them to move it forward. And it was sort of like a dare to move it forward, because I know what you're doing and what you're trying to do, and I'm going to expose you. And I think that's what we need to do. Expose them for what it is that they're doing and how they're doing it, so that, like you said, collectively, we can get people moving. Let me bring in Pastor Haynes. Pastor, you heard Representative Kenyatta from Pennsylvania talk about that collective movement of us getting together and organizing. You're an advocate. You've been doing that. You sit on the board of NAN. Talk to us about that and tell people why that's so important.
Yeah, and shout out to the next senator from the state of Pennsylvania,
Absolutely.
Malcolm Kenyatta,
From
who's
your mouth to God's ears, Pastor.
hey, I'm already praying for that, bro. Already, because I mean, you represent those names well, Malcolm X and Jomo Kenyatta. I mean,
That's right.
hey, you can't beat that. So I salute you. So let me just say this, and I appreciate this so much, Hill Michael, because what you all were saying is the essence of organizing. It's exposing the lie and enlightening people to what's true. I mean, the bottom line is, let's just be honest. The whole concept of a living wage, minimum wage, the majority of Americans, when enlightened about it, they're down with that. But what's going on is the lie has taken off and has been running for so long that you have people convinced, well, once we have a minimum wage, that's going to hurt the economy. That is a lie from the pit of hell. And so what we have a responsibility in organizing to do, and I love what Malcolm said, it ain't about a cult of personality. We've seen that in the Republican Party. They are a cult with their cult leader, who is the vanquished ex-president of this country. It is about, however, organizing by simply saying, as we make our phone calls, as we get information out, this is the lie. Now, this is the truth right here, and break down what the truth is. And once the truth sets people free, then the other folk get locked up by their lies. But the key is, again, exposing the lie, enlightening people with truth, and engaging in the hard work of organizing on the ground. Georgia is the classic example. Stacey Abrams and all of them bad sisters down there who organized Georgia. That's one of the greatest upsets of all time. That's Ali and Liston. But it happened because he organized behind the scenes.
Okay. That's it, bro. Ali Liston, right? Left hook. Bam. He's
Bam.
out. He's
That's
out.
right.
So, Representative, you have a bill that you're pushing through the legislature now about election and changing the election access. And I think it's an early voting bill.
Yep.
One of the things I want you to talk to me about that is that what I looked at your bill and a number of other bills across the country. They're all election bills looking to expand access for early voting and making sure that the same process for early voting is that we have on election day is for early voting. But the one thing that I see in each of your bills is that we don't talk about the number of machines in the polling place. And what I've learned is that each time in our community, especially we saw it in Georgia and DeKalb County and what's the other counties out there? They didn't have enough voting machines in there, even though they were still access had the same amount of time. What can you do to possibly amend and take even that up? Because, you know, in the white communities, they got 10, 12, 15 voting machines and their wait time is 15 minutes. In our community, we have 4, 2 break down. Then we got to wait for them to call and come back. And we're standing in line for hours. How can you address that issue as well and possibly include that in the bill so it mandates how many voting machines and it's equal across the state?
So, quick answer for you: money. You know, the only way we were able to conduct the elections we just had is because the city of Philadelphia, just take Philadelphia for example, had to apply for a grant and got a grant for $10 million to help execute the election. Now, just think about that for a second, because people were celebrating that. Oh, the city of Philadelphia got a $10 million grant. How great is that? What country, and because the pastor's on, I'm not going to insert a word I want to insert, but what type
Let
of
me mute
democracy?
him for you, Kenyatta. Let me mute him, and then you go ahead and say it, okay?
All right, Pastor, close your ears. I mean, what the fuck are we talking about? When we have to have nonprofits come in and help the greatest democracy in the world conduct an election because we haven't allocated the level of resources that need to be allocated. That's actually an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment that one of the most basic jobs we haven't accomplished.
But it's a strategy too. I mean,
oh no, 100%.
It's
100%.
Yeah.
You know, when the Republicans and the voting bill, which allowed for the expanded mail-in voting, I was supportive of that in theory. But a part of what I said over and over and over again is that you need money to implement this stuff.
Right.
And so Republicans wanted to change the biggest overhaul in voting in Pennsylvania in decades, and then say, well, counties, you figure out how to pay for it. So that's the challenge we're dealing with right now. And if you talk to county commissioners, as I have, all across the Commonwealth, they've said the same thing over and over and over again, that they need the resources to do this. And one of the things that really worries me that a lot of people aren't talking about is that we have seen mass folks resigning from doing these roles at the counties.
Right.
We've seen it overwhelmingly. People have basically said this last election was too much. We didn't have what we needed to do. My teams and staff were working overtime. And then we had the former president, the vanquished former president, I love that, Pastor, on TV, then attacking folks for just trying to count every ballot. This is not partisan stuff. And when we talk about counting every vote, I'm not just saying we count every Democratic vote, every independent vote. We just ought to count every vote. And the fact is, if we don't put our money where our mouth is, everything we're talking about is going to be difficult. And that's one of the things the federal government can do. We can secure voting with the John Lewis Voting Rights Act to make sure that there are protections that were stripped out. But then also, we have to make sure we put our money where our mouth is and send money to counties, not to just execute the election, but to deal with some of the challenges that we couldn't have envisioned even 10 or 15 years ago. Folks who are using cyber and other things to really get into the networks, to delete folks from roles, and to, possibly go further than that. And so that's something that we have to really pay attention to. And Congress has, in previous budgets, passed money to make sure we can harden our resources. But we didn't see that money get out in the way that it needed to get out in the previous administration. And I hope that in this upcoming election that we're going to have here in a couple of months, that the federal government, as well as where I am in the state house, that we allocate the type of resources that are necessary to make sure we have another election like the one we just had, which was safe. And a lot of experts say it was the safest one we've ever had. But that's going to take money to ensure that that happens again.
But you also have the issue with the legislation for the Supreme Court and trying to create these districts for the judgeships. So because they didn't get the ruling that they wanted, so now they want to mandate, the legislature wants to mandate the judiciary in there and create these partisan districts. And the judiciary is the check and balance on the legislature. So now the legislature is trying to reverse the roles and take over.
Well, this is a part of a pattern. The same people supporting this bill also tried to impeach all the members of the Supreme Court when they put forward rulings that they didn't like. And so now they're trying to do the gerrymandered districts. And people have seen these districts because Pennsylvania was in the news, I guess, 4 years ago when the Supreme Court redrew all the congressional maps and said the maps that you have, it looks like, I've stopped saying it looks like a kid drew them, because I have young godkids and they can draw better than some of these maps that we've seen. So I don't want to be disrespectful to children. They could have done better than this. And so instead of trying to convince you to vote for them, they are trying to make it so your vote can be diluted. And we need to be very clear why they're doing what they're doing with the courts, why they're doing what they're doing with voting. It's not just about voting. It's about them moving forward an agenda that leaves working people behind, moving forward an agenda that leaves Black and brown people behind. And because they know that they can't convince, people of color, besides some of these crazy folks who are out here shucking and jiving for them, they can't convince a majority of people of color to support their ideas. And they're even losing a lot of people of conscience who are saying, this is crazy. I don't want to be a part of this. Mm-hmm. And so instead of trying to convince you of their ideas, these white supremacist, racist ideas, they've now decided that we're going to go back into our old bag of tricks and just try to make sure we shut you up and silence you. Mm-hmm. And that is something that, we have to do what the pastor talked about, really enlighten people about what's going on, because all the things that we're fighting for, increasing the minimum wage, making sure everybody has health care, protecting the planet that God has gifted to us.
Right.
These are universally popular ideas.
Right.
They're popular ideas with everybody but the folks in power.
And the reality of it is, they want the same thing. They just don't want to admit it because they don't want to be able to do what they did. I mean, let's think back. When Barack Obama came into office, the first 4 years, he proposed everything that they wanted. He proposed everything they wanted. And that's why Democrats didn't support him in the midterms. And they were like, what you doing? I mean, I remember everybody was up in arms like, what you doing? He said, I'm trying to compromise. I'm going to introduce their bill. I want to do their bill. And they voted against their own interests in their own bills. And that's where we are, Pastor. The education for us, I think of Lauryn Hill, the miseducation of Black folks, right? We need to make sure that, like Malcolm said, like you were saying, I was thinking about it earlier when I was doing the research and just reading and looking. I was saying we need to put together this grassroots, but more of a marketing method. The one thing the Democrats cannot do and have not done since Clinton and Obama is come up with a sustainable message that's concise, that's impactful, and says exactly what you need to know. You know where I'm going, Pastor. Willie Brown would always have you understand exactly what you need to say it real short, real concise, so that anytime someone went up to them and asked them, what does Malcolm Kenyatta stand for? He stands for education. He stands for equal rights. He stands for a fair wage. He stands for equal justice. And you know exactly what it is. You don't have to sit there and say, well, I don't like his personality, but I like his policies. You don't have to do it, Donald Trump.
Right.
You know exactly what it is. So how do we do that? How do we literally do that? And more importantly, I'm gonna ask this question. How do the churches start back where they were as being that epicenter and centerpiece of our community, and educating us and empowering us to know exactly what the truth is?
I love that. And let me just piggyback on that last piece you said right before the question. Jesse Jackson made this statement. He said that elections are won by politicians who either they do one of two things. They're either good at tapping into the fears of people, a la Donald Trump,
right,
or they offer hope in that they become the embodiment of a hope that opens the door to a brand new era. And so when you think of Barack Obama, and yes, we can, when you think of Barack Obama and the whole concept of what? Ensuring that all have access to health care,
right,
but they became synonymous with a hope that opened the door to a brand new era. Now, I love the question because one of the things that was reinforced for me as I watched the piece by Professor Henry Louis Gates last week about the Black church.
Yes.
Is the Black church at its best
yes,
has always been an organizing center for our community. And so when the people who went to the Edmund Pettus Bridge eventually crossed it, they left from Brown Memorial or Brown Chapel AME Church right there in Selma, Alabama. When they had the organizing meetings, the mass meetings in Montgomery and in Birmingham, they met at Black churches because the Black churches were what? The organizing centers. And so we've got to get back to that. And not just use our big buildings to meet on Sundays.
Right.
And Corona took care of that. So you can't meet on Sunday. So the least you can do now is organize our communities, organize our people, and use and repurpose that facility now for the advancement of our people. There's an amazing book by Henry Mitchell called Black Church Beginnings. And he put it like this. He said, the Black church at its birth during enslavement, every Black preacher made it her or his business to transform their pulpit into a platform for abolition. I love that right there. Every Black preacher recognized if I'm going to be about it and really minister to my congregation, I've got to make sure that what I'm doing in here is organizing for the abolition of the hell they're catching out there.
Right.
So that's how the Black church was born. So evidently, we've gotten away from what's in our spiritual DNA, because we've adopted so much of white evangelicalism, which is so busy being white, it doesn't get around to being evangelical.
Right.
And I think it's very important for us to go back to our roots. I'm saying at our church all the time, we've got to be the organizing epicenter of every movement for justice in our community, or we don't deserve to be called a church.
That's absolutely it. That's absolutely it. Because when I think about the symposium that I put together, I called it the Black Reset. It was the Black Reset of having us come back to the church, and I used our church in DC as that point of trying to mobilize and get people around us to understand this is where it is. Because I remember growing up, just the idea that nothing happened in the community without you going to that pastor first. You didn't get nothing. If you was an elected official or politician, you had to come to the pastor. You had to kiss his ring. And then he got those people out to help you and got them people to vote. And so, Malcolm, I'm going to have the lieutenant governor on next Monday, your opponent. And they've already got you guys in the news, pitted against one another and everything else. But I recognize that as a young brother, and what Pastor just said, living that message of hope, and how you've put that message of hope already out there, just in what you've done while you was in committee. What is going to be your message, and what's your message to the voters of Pennsylvania out there to let them know your message of hope is out there for them to support you come, was it 2022?
You know, listen, this is what I say to folks. This is not about, and I said this already, but it's worth repeating. You know, what we're trying to build is a coalition. I don't need people to put all their hopes and faith and dreams into me. I want them to put their hopes and faiths and dreams into them, into what we can build together. When I think of any moments of substantial change, it wasn't because one person stepped up and had an epiphany. You know, as the old saints will say, if you walking and ain't nobody following you, you just taking a walk. For us to build something that is big enough to meet the moment, we have to recognize the value that each and every one of us has in this thing. On every issue we're talking about, this is not hypothetical to me. This is not philosophical to me. This stuff is personal to me. And so what happens is we get folks who talk good. They got a list of talking points of things that they think Black folks care about. But the reality is we have to cross our fingers and cross our toes and hope that they actually go execute all the things that they've told us. With me, people don't have to hope that. They don't have to wish it. Because what I've been talking about and what I'm talking about is what I know in my bones. I know that we can't continue a process by which we talk about how much we love Black lives, but when a Black person steps up to run, they say, oh, well, no, we got this other person that can better talk about your life and your experience. People talk about how much they care about working people, but when working people step up to run, they want to say, oh, well, we found this person from, from Harvard or whatever, and, they wrote a paper about how much they care about working people, and so we'll have them do it instead. We talk about how the COVID coronavirus crisis has impacted Black folks first and worst, and yet we say, oh, well, let's find somebody else who can talk about it. Nobody is better able to talk about or lead on these issues than the people who have experienced them. When I talk about raising the wage, I know what it's like to be paid a starvation level wage. When I talk about evictions, I know what it's like to have to take everything I have, throw it in a couple of trash bags as we move on to the next place. When people talk about healthcare, I know what it's like to not have healthcare. And so listen, I have a lot of respect for people who are allies, who want to step up and be supportive. But the best way that allies can support is by standing next to people who are most effective, not standing in front of people who are most affected and saying that I know your story best. We don't need any mascots. We need a movement.
I'm telling you, that's powerful right there. Pastor, as we get ready to conclude out here, because I don't want to stop. I want to keep going, but I'm be respectful of you guys.
I'll come back anytime, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Representative. I'm about to call you Reverend, Pastor, and everything else because you're preaching now.
Well, I got ordained when I was 13, so I'll take that too, brother.
We did it. We did it.
I knew something was there, right? So let me ask you this. What's at stake for us, Pastor Haynes? What's at stake for us? Because, you know, I always ask that question, and that's what we call the show, what's at stake? How do we take today and move forward to tomorrow, understanding and recognizing that tomorrow's not promised?
I'm going to give you a metaphor, and it's happened recently, and it speaks profoundly to how policy impacts our personal lives. I'm in Dallas, Texas. We were hit 2 weeks ago with the weather apocalypse of 2021. But it wasn't just the weather apocalypse. It was 20 years of Republican policies that set the stage for the fact that we still have yet to recover from the weather apocalypse, even though we're out of the news cycle. Right. So here's what happened. Here's the metaphor. I-75 runs from downtown Dallas north up toward Oklahoma. I-45 runs south to Houston. What separates the two is downtown, but it's the same freeway. During the weather apocalypse, Senator Kenyatta, let me tell you what happened. During that weather apocalypse, they literally cleared the freeway, I-75 going north. I-45 remained filled with ice, sleet, and snow. You already know what side of town I-45 is on. It's our side of town. And so when you look at the weather apocalypse and the continuing suffering of our people, it has to do with white supremacy and policy. It has to do with the fact that Texas is the only state in the lower 48 that has its own power grid. It has to do with the fact that Texas, under Republican leadership, please don't miss this, has insisted on deregulation. And so they're trying to put ERCOT, they're putting ERCOT on blast and these other companies on blast. What should be put on blast is a system that allows deregulation to cause these companies to go without accountability. That's what's going on. And so what's at stake right now is recognizing, as we said earlier, all politics is local. Your very lives are at stake. We had people die during the weather apocalypse. We have people suffering right now because of the fact that policies have been tilted to the advantage of those on the 75 side of town, and those who are disadvantaged on the 45 side of town are still suffering. So policy impacts us personally. Everything is at stake. Education is at stake. Health is at stake. Finally getting rid of medical apartheid, food apartheid. All of that is at stake. Whether or not we gonna live a quality life and experience the abundant life, that is at stake. And so that's why we've got to organize right now. And again, I got to say to you, Kelly Michael, I salute you, man, because we're not in the midst of a huge election cycle. But what you're doing, you're raising consciousness. You're making us think right now about what we need to be doing to make sure we get people like Brother Kenyatta in, that we are thinking about policies we want to pass right now, because literally our lives are at stake. Y'all just put up that horrific number of Black people, 23% of all folk who've been killed by this COVID-19 crisis. It's the result of COVID-19. And so COVID-19 made COVID-19 all the worse on our side of town. And that can only be rectified when we change a system. And you can't change a system by just acting like it ain't happening.
Absolutely. Wow. Absolutely. Representative.
I mean, what else do you say, man? What else do you say? I mean, what do you say? At that point, you just pass the collection plate, and what do you say? There's nothing else to say. But I do want to say, brother, you got
a mic. You got a mic. Just go.
you just drop it. But I do want to say, and the pastor just said it. Thank you for using the platform that you've built to talk about these issues, even when an election is not going on. because people really need us to do something right now. And a part of the way we get folks there is by having these serious conversations. And you've certainly continued to do that over a long period of time. And I'm just incredibly grateful.
I appreciate both of you, my brothers. I appreciate you for making time, because clearly I know national networks are after you at all points in times, and you gave us a few moments of your time. So I'm grateful to you, and I'm very appreciative. I got you back.
Anytime, brother. Anytime.
Because we're going to certainly be pushing it and pushing you out there, because like I said, I've been watching you, and I said, I want to get the brother on the show. I want to talk to him. I want to get his word out there, because he may be in Pennsylvania, but we got a whole bunch of folks. I got Chicago, I got Atlanta, Georgia, I got people all across Dallas, Texas, right? Well, we're going to make sure we get out there and help and support you and push you over the top, because we need a brother out there that's not just looking for the support and help, but he's going to do something with the support and help and put people and include people into his platform and what is out there and what he's trying to do. So I really appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, brother. And thank you, Pastor.
We send money to your campaign.
Oh, exactly. So please.
I haven't finished yet, because I'm going to say, how do we get in touch with you? How do we make sure we know what we're doing so we can make sure we help you out?
Yeah, so folks can just go to malcolmkenyatta.com. Literally everything's there. We are going to be over the coming months, rolling out a series of things that really talk about how we meet the moment, how we meet the need with policy, because we do all this hard stuff for the campaign to actually go implement policy. So folks can follow me at Malcolm Kenyatta everywhere. Can go to malcolmkenyatta.com to get engaged in the campaign. This is not about one person. This is about all of our families, and we have to remember that. And so, again, thank you, my friend. Thank you, Pastor. I appreciate you.
Pastor, how do we follow you, get in touch with you so we can listen to you on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, whenever you speak and teaching?
I appreciate you. Yeah, follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram at F8 Unscripted, Facebook, Frederick D. Haynes, YouTube, Frederick Haynes, and Sunday, Wednesdays, friendshipwest.org.
All right. Black America. I say this to you every week, all the time, right? It's about us. And right now it's time for the Black Reset. I posted this past week me getting the COVID vaccine shot, and I analogized it to voting. In New York State, 78% of white folks have received the vaccine, whereas 7.9% of Black folks. Now that's in New York. Now that's in a state where we would think that we would be somewhere parity, where we would at least have 50%. If they got 78% of white folks in New York already vaccinated, but only 7.9% of Black folks, but yet we are the ones that are dying the most out of this whole pandemic. I don't care about what happened with Tuskegee. I need you to understand that the coronavirus vaccine is like your vote. If you didn't need it so badly, they wouldn't be trying to keep it away from you. Plain and simple. They keeping it away from you. They're making it harder for you to get, because it's just like your vote. They don't want you to have it. Remember when the pandemic started and everyone was dying? They thought it was white people who was dying. But as soon as they found out it was Black folks, what happened? They said, open the states back up. Open everything back up. And that's when everything started to fall and crumble. So don't sit there and let yourself be bamboozled, taken advantage of, or be asleep. Pastor said when he started out, before he had to get off, we are woke. God is woke. We are woke. Let's understand what Representative Kenyatta said. Let's galvanize. Let's organize. Let's come together and let's do something about our own situation. You hear me say it all the time, and Representative Kenyatta said it. I don't need somebody to come in my neighborhood to gentrify it. I can gentrify my own neighborhood and raise my own property taxes, because I'm taking care of my property just like you take care of your property, whether you're renting or whatever else. I don't need somebody else coming in my neighborhood to make my neighborhood safe, affordable, or make it look better. We can do that for ourselves. All we have to do is recognize that we have the power to do it, and do it. Whether you're renting or buying, it doesn't matter. Because if you rent long enough, he's going to leave. And just like he would sell it to somebody else, he can sell it to you and you can buy it. So don't let it happen.
Yep.
Out of five, there's 535 members of Congress. There's only 124 people of color, 58 African Americans. We're going to count 59 because we're going to prophesy and decree and declare Malcolm Kenyatta, right? I'm going to help him run. I'm going to go to Philadelphia, right? I'm going to help him
brother.
best I can, okay? And I want you to help me help him. Go to his website. His Twitter and everything is right there. His website is malcolmkenyatta.com. Go to it, donate, contribute, help him out, and let's do something collectively to empower ourselves. People, do not sit back, because the thing is like this. If they didn't want us to have it, they will make sure we take it away from us. And that's what they're doing. So if it's hard for us to get, that means we should have it. If it's hard for us to have, that means we should have it. And I tweeted out earlier, civil rights, equal rights, voting rights, until we change, those things are on the chopping block. And the only way we're going to get it back is take back our block. Until next time, if it's social, economic, or political, it's Black Politics Today. I want to thank my brother, Representative Malcolm Kenyatta. Thank you, Pastor. I appreciate you, my brother. You always there for me, right? And I thank you so much for just allowing me to be in your presence once again, my brother. Malcolm, I'm certainly gonna call you again, my friend.
Anytime. I mean it, brother. Anytime.
I thank you. I thank Matt. Tell your campaign manager or whoever Matt is. Tell him thank you for helping us put this together. And of course, next time, look out for us, because we're gonna make sure that we do something for you and get out there and help you out. All right,
you, brother. Take care.
I want to let you guys know that I just really want to thank Malcolm and thank Pastor for joining us tonight. And certainly we have to do something, because it has to be done. It has to be done that we take a second look at how we do things. And we have to do things better than the way we did it before. Because if we don't, it's going to hurt us in the long run. It's going to hurt us in the long run. I want to thank everyone for watching. Thank you for your comments. Got my second vaccine today. Congratulations, Cameron. Congratulations, my brother. I have to tell you guys, I appreciate Pastor and appreciate Malcolm, of course. That was a powerful conversation with those two brothers. Let's get it together. Let's do what we have to do, and let's get out there and support us and not worry about what other people are talking about. Good night, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Black Politics Today on Eye for What's at Stake in Global Politics with your host, Kelly Michael Williams. Join us live each Monday from 7 to 8 p.m. Until next time, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and download us on iTunes at Black Politics Today.
Good night.